Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks with another tutorial for ADSR. In today's video, I'm going to show you a tip and trick that will add more three-dimensional depth to your reverb effects. So you can use this on almost any sound source. You can use it on leads, plucks, pads, vocals, whatever. I've even tried it on basses here and there, and sometimes it even works with that. So what happens when you have a mix and you have, your lead, maybe your pluck or your rhythmic instrument that's pretty centered, it's not super panned out. You have your bass, you have your kick and your clap. So you have 4 or 5 sources maybe centered in the mix, and you have your vocals. Well, how do you create that separation? Well, you can either pan things, turn things up or down, or reverb. Well, reverb's used as a 3-dimensional mix tool. It's thought it creates this perception of things being sucked back into the mix. So if there's a lot of reverb, it sounds further away from our ear. And if there's less reverb, it's dry, it sounds really up front and close to our ears. But if you have 4 to 6 sound sources hanging out in the middle of your mix, and you have reverb on maybe 2 or 3 of those, your reverb space in your mix, which is that phenomena of sucking it back into the mix, starts to kind of lose its impact and its punch because it just adds up into this wash of reverb. So let's talk about panning reverbs. And I know this, I actually Googled panning reverbs before I did this tutorial, and I didn't see many people who did this. Gearsluts was kind of up in the air about whether you should do this or not. I love doing it. I do it on lead vocals almost all the time. Very rarely don't do it on lead vocals. I do it on my synth sounds too, like the main synth in a drop or whatever. So let's look at this little demo real quick. I don't know what genre this is. The demos are pulled from a Tropical House demo. So it's at 110 beats per minute, and I just played some new chords just to fill up the middle space of the mix, but let's listen to it.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night. Honey, let's go for a ride, for a ride. Nothing greater than you and I.
Right, so we have this little synthy piano that's panned barely left and right, so it's pretty much all center. Some pads that are panned left and right, but there's still some center content. Bass, so it's center and center. Now let's talk about where the reverb lies. There's reverb on this synth piano. If I took it off, it just doesn't sound as cool, but you can hear there's a lot of reverb in the center, so same with the pad. There's reverb there. Well, the vocals are just dry right now.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky.
They're just how I track them coming into Logic.
We're like
So let's look at this idea of creating this 3-dimensional depth with reverb. Now remember, you can do this with anything. It doesn't just have to be vocals. I'm just showing you with vocals because it's a really dry sound source. All right, so instead of throwing it on my actual track, and this will remain true for any DAW, do an aux send or a bus. It's kind of like doing parallel reverb. It's kind of like parallel compression, but you're doing it with reverb. So I'm going to do a bus here. I'll just do bus 3, and I'm going to do another bus. I'm going to do bus 4. So you create 2 aux sends or buses, whatever your DAW likes to call that, and then just turn up the amount to, you can go to 0, but it'll typically be too much. So I usually go to like -15 in Logic, just because it allows me to play with the reverb controls a little more. So there's the first thing. Create 2 aux sends, right? And now your source signal is going to be louder.
we're like diamonds.
Because basically I just created 2 buses that are 2 new aux tracks that are all centered with the vocals. Well, let's pan these. So I'm going to pan bus 3 here to the left. And I'll pan bus 4. I did that wrong. So bus 3 to the left, bus 4 to the right. So if I solo my 3rd bus here, you'll hear the vocal just panned out to the left.
We're like diamonds in the sky.
Right? And if I do bus 4 and solo that, it'll be to the right.
We're like diamonds in. We're like diamonds in.
So I can mute my actual main sound here. And if I'll show you what this kind of sounds like. So if I do a pre-fade or send in Logic, we'll still be, or I can turn it down.
We're like diamonds in the sky.
There's the left and right content.
We're just rebels of the night, of the night.
So I'll always check it with the volume by turning down my main signal, and then all you have to do is throw on your reverb. All right, so let me change this back to a pre-fade or a post-fader. I was just doing that to show you what it sounded like with the split signals. So we'll do post fader. All right, so now what I'm going to do is load in a reverb for each of these. Now here's where it gets cool. I have found that this works best if you use two separate reverbs. So I'll re-say that again because it's kind of weird. On your left channel, use reverb A, whatever it is. And on your right send or right channel, use reverb B, whatever that may be. So let me pull up, I'll just use Valhalla Vintage Room on the left. So now my left sound like this.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night.
All right, so there's my left channel.
We're like diamonds.
And now there's the left with the center content. So I have it panned hard left right now, but we'll revisit that idea in a little bit. Now I'm going to go to my right send, and I'm going to select a different reverb. I'm going to select Valhalla Vintage Verb. Now I'm probably going to keep this on the 1970s because it's a darker color, and I like that sound a little bit more than the really bright color. But let me solo just the right reverb now.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night. Honey, let's go for a ride, for a ride. Nothing greater than you and I.
All right, so I'll just keep it on this concert hall setting. You can do plate or room or whatever you'd like on any of your reverb.
We're like diamonds in the sky.
I lied, I changed it to plate. So anyway, I have a plate reverb on the right side of my signal, and I have a room model or a room algorithm on the left. It creates a really cool stereo image of the sound, and it makes these in-the-box reverbs sound a little bit thicker and adds a little bit more depth. Because there's just, these are two different ideas. I have a plate on one side and I have a room on the other. Yes, it's not actually, a real room and a real plate. But to my ear and to most people who hear some of my mixes or whatever, they think it sounds thick and lush. So let me solo just the reverbs now.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night. Honey, let's go for a ride.
All right, so it sounds pretty cool with just that. Now let's bring back in the main signal.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night. Honey, let's go for a ride, for a ride.
So I'm just adjusting the send amount. And the cool thing is, you don't have to keep this panned hard left and hard right. That really depends on your mix. So I have to listen to this in context with this quote. I'm putting this in bunny ears mix. It's just, the 4 instruments so you could hear it in context. But if you do this on a synth, you probably won't want it out left and right. You probably want it maybe at 30, 35, or 40, because what you're doing is you're just extending your stereo field with this reverb and cleaning up the middle of the mix so the ear hears the really upfront sound, but you still have that lush kind of factor out left and right. So I might bring these in to about 30 or 35. I'll bring in this one. I'll bring in the left one to about 35, and I'll probably do the right one at maybe 40. So let's see how this sounds.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night. Honey, let's go for a ride, for a ride. Nothing greater than you and I. We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night. Honey, let's go for a ride, for a ride. Nothing greater than you and I.
All right, so I was just adjusting certain parameters there, and I really think it sounds pretty cool. And it keeps my center vocal very up front, and it doesn't suck it into the mix, but it still gives it that soft feel.
We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of. We're like diamonds in the sky, in the sky. We're just rebels of the night, of the night.
All right, so like I said, you can do this on any sound. You can do it on your leads, you can do it on pads, you can do it really anywhere. Now, to take things just one step further, you can even EQ that reverb depending on your source signal. Now, most third-party reverbs will give you things like some amount of low cut, high cut, but you can accentuate the frequencies that you need to with the reverb. So this is a vocal, so I may accentuate around anywhere from 2 to 5K, depending on this voice. Now, if it's a synth, you can accentuate the high end, cut the low end out, so it's not competing with that part of your mix. But there you go. There is a unique way to create some three-dimensional depth with your reverb effects and your reverb processing, and also create some separation space in your mixes. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.